Hello and welcome to an India Today special broadcast that comes to you from the strife-torn Ukrainian capital Kyiv. I'm Gaurav Sawant. The situation in Kyiv does remain extremely tense. There was shelling that was reported in multiple parts of this country. We'll tell you about that in greater detail during the course of the hour and the day. But for now, we will concentrate on air power and the effective use of air power and air defense. Russia's attempts to have total air supremacy and Ukraine's efforts and heroic efforts in places to ensure that Russia does not enjoy that air supremacy, denying the use of air power or at least checking it as much as possible. Over the course of the next half hour, India Today's team of reporters here in Ukraine and our producers in Delhi will get you all the details on this very crucial aspect. But that big story that's coming up is the United States rejecting Poland's offer of the MiG-29 air superiority fighters. Now, Poland yesterday had said, late yesterday, Poland claimed that they are willing to offer every operational MiG-29 fighter jet in the inventory of Poland's Air Force and give it to Ukraine, but not directly. Here's the catch. Poland said they will have all these MiG-29 operational fleets of MiG-29 positioned at the Ramstein Air Base in Germany. This is a crucial North Atlantic Treaty Organization air base in Germany. It's used by the US Air Force and US forces very extensively. So they said they'll fly all these aircraft to Germany, position all the fighters there, and Ukraine can collect it from Germany. Point one. Point two, the second catch. Poland wanted corresponding US fighters with the same airworthy aircraft, same shelf life, and whether it's the airframe, engine or avionics, they should be airworthy is what they said, and they wanted with corresponding lifespan. So even if they're second-hand aircraft, they have to have the corresponding lifespan. The United States has rejected that offer. The United States says this requires more discussion with other partners, and this, as the US put it, was completely untenable. This is the second time that the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, the United States, Poland, they appear to have let down Ukraine. And how? I quickly now want to cut across to India Today's executive editor, Shiv Arur, joining us for more on this big story. And Shiv explains why Poland's offer was untenable, as the US put it, and why Poland has been let down for the second time.
The Ukrainians, including President Zelensky, have said that we need a no-fly zone, or plan B is we need fighter aircraft that our pilots can fly, if not yours, and therefore please give them to us as quickly as possible. Poland has said that we'll give you these fighters and we will send them to Germany. We won't send them to Poland, but we will send them to Germany, to the Ramstein Air Base. It says it's up to, they've put it in the US hands. They've said, we'll send these jets there. It's up to the US to send the jets to Ukraine. So there's that caveat also. The US says the jet offer is untenable. You're sending them to us and we'll have to send them, so one of the NATO countries will be seen as indulging in an act of war against Russia. The US is unwilling to get drawn into this war. President Biden has already made that very clear. But the US wants these NATO countries, ki aap bhej do bhaiya, you send your jets to Ukraine and help them out, but we will not play a part in it. This is being seen, the reason why we're saying this is shambolic is because this is the second big betrayal after NATO has said that we will not accede to this request from NATO, saying please impose a no-fly zone over Ukraine. Now, the Western jet stunt this is how it's playing out in Europe. That is Warsaw. That is the capital of Poland. That's the country in which all these MiG-29 fighters are. The reason why MiG-29 fighters are important is because Ukraine also flies MiG-29 fighters. So it's being seen as a commonality, a common platform that their pilots can fly with very little, conversion training. They want to send it from Warsaw to Ramstein, which is in Germany. Germany doesn't have a border with Ukraine. Poland does. In Ramstein, the plan, the sort of skeletal plan is Ukrainian pilots can go there, train on those aircraft, and they'll fly those aircraft to Ukraine, because Germany certainly doesn't want to have any part of it. The Pentagon says we cannot send Polish jets to Ukraine. We will not do that from Ramstein, because that is something that impacts the entire NATO alliance. So it's a bit of a mess. You've got the West looking actually quite silly right now because there's already a sense of betrayal in Ukraine right now. Now they're playing Chinese checkers with their jets as part of the NATO alliance, but not actually substantively sending any forces into Ukraine. It is understandable why they don't want to do that, but these little moves between Poland and Germany and NATO and the US just shows that there is no plan in place.
Ukraine being let down yet again by the North Atlantic Treaty Organization countries. This offer of Poland was shambolic. US says it's untenable. But Poland apart, Ukraine is desperately trying to protect its skies, its airspace. It sought a no-fly zone, but that no-fly zone very clearly is not possible. But how is Ukraine defending itself? Ukraine is using its air defense assets to the fullest. Today is day 14 of that war. Day 14 of the war, the air defense assets, the surface-to-air missiles, the surface-to-air batteries, they remain intact, at least in some portions. The Russian forces, from day one, have systematically targeted 14 airfields, and those airfields continue to be targeted even till late yesterday. Vinnytsia was targeted yesterday. Kharkiv was targeted. Kherson was targeted. Airfields are being targeted across Ukraine. There was a report that Borispil airfield, which is a civilian airfield, that too was targeted by rockets late yesterday. But Ukraine continues to strike and strike at Russian aircraft, and these include Su-35s fighter bombers, these include Su-27s, these include Su-30s. That is what Ukraine has claimed, that they have downed close to 100 fighter jets, attack helicopters and transport helicopters of the Russian armed forces. We bring you this report.
Russia fiercely escalates airstrikes on Ukraine. It is using its fighter jets to hit key Ukrainian cities. In the last 72 hours, Putin has unleashed the fury of Russia's hellbirds on Kiev and Kharkiv. Ukraine claims to have shot down a Sukhoi Su-34 fighter bomber in Kharkiv on Monday. They have released images of the debris of a Russian plane, completely destroyed and demolished. Ukraine also claims it has shot down more than 7 Russian war machines in the last 3 days, including jets and Mi-35 choppers. Ukrainian authorities have shared several images of pilots who they claim are Russians now in their custody.
Мимо помилилось. Вот.
Нет, это я знаю.
У тебя слетное задание было, а где карта? Вот это.
Russia is using its formidable air superiority to control Ukraine's skies. The most visible Russian aircraft in the Ukraine war is the Sukhoi Su-25, a tough Soviet-era bird that's taken on most attack duties. The Mi-24 is also being used by the Russian forces. They are sturdy, heavily armed, and used to support ground troops. The third Russian aircraft seen in the skies over Ukraine is the Sukhoi Su-34, a supersonic medium-range fighter bomber used for tactical strikes. Su-34 have been in eastern and northern Ukraine. Another Russian attack helicopter on combat duty is the Kamau Ka-52. These images of one such helicopter made to force land went viral during the early days of the invasion. Several more are said to be flying sorties on the northern border. The images coming from Ukraine show Russia's plans are striking deeper inside Ukraine than earlier believed. These airstrikes could be the prelude to the real battle for Kyiv. Bureau Report, India Today.
One of the most dramatic images in this war is the shooting down of a Mi-35 attack helicopter using a Stinger surface-to-air missile. And that image went viral worldwide. That image is being studied very closely by aviation experts and analysts in attack and defense mechanisms. Now remember, whether it's the fighter jets or helicopters, they're armed with flares and shafts to divert the heat-seeking Stinger missiles. But the use of these Stinger missiles by the Ukrainian ground forces, by their air defense artillery, by their air defense forces is a study in itself. Take a look at this report that went viral globally.
Perhaps the most dramatic footage in 10 days of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Cameras from a drone capturing a low-flying Russian Mi-35 attack helicopter falling prey to a Ukrainian Stinger missile. The chopper, flying at low altitude to avoid radars, to avoid eyes, meets a devastating end. The Stinger missile, supplied by NATO with infrared homing systems, hitting the helicopter with deadly accuracy. Both Germany and the United States have been pumping in large numbers of Stinger missiles to the Ukrainian military over the last few weeks in order to challenge and shoot down Russian air power. The missile proving its worth in this video, the first of its kind released by the Ukrainian government. Reported to be on the outskirts of Capital Kyiv, showing the heavily armed military helicopter of the Russian armed forces ending in a massive fireball and a plume of smoke. A rapid and fiery end to an attack helicopter crew that could well have been on an attack mission.
This Mi-35 helicopter, and when you look at these images, it's a young soldier who's actually running behind that helicopter, aims with his surface-to-air man-portable Stinger missile, fires and forgets, and it goes and hits the target. It goes and hits the attack helicopter, and the attack helicopter comes crashing down. This shows how a Stinger can easily bring down a low-flying fighter plane. It can bring down a helicopter.
As Russian troops advance into several parts of Ukraine and encircle cities, images of the Ukrainian residents have been flooding social media. This time, a Russian jet apparently being shot down in the northern city of Chernihiv. Captured on camera by local residents while they cheered as the jet was brought down. It was later reported that the Russian pilot of the jet had been captured alive, while his co-pilot didn't survive. Another Russian plane was shot down in the city of Mykolaiv. A dramatic video of the plane's pilot being interrogated by Ukrainian forces has also surfaced.
Какой части? 69-82. Откуда сам родом? Прям родился родом? Да.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky claims in a televised address Ukraine has captured, wounded and killed over 10,000 Russian soldiers since the start of the invasion.
Almost 10,000 Russian soldiers killed. 10,000. This is dreadful.
There's plenty of fighting. Airstrikes are basically an everyday occurrence all over Ukraine. Again, that's what Ukraine repeats its demand to close off the sky for the Russians. Russians are using those planes to hit civilian targets, pedestrian districts. Reality is this is a battle that is raging all over Ukraine, and Russians are using their air power advantage to push at the civilians like no time since the Second World War.
President Putin, meanwhile, has blamed the United Kingdom for triggering the military conflict. Can Ukraine successfully resist the overwhelming and intensifying scale of the invading force? With Gaurav Sawant and Rajesh Pawar in Kyiv, Bureau Report, India Today.
The use of air power by Russia and the denial of air power by Ukraine. That's a study. In fact, aviation experts are studying this across the world. And the Russian Air Force, they've unleashed their best. Whether it's the Su-35 fighter bombers, state-of-the-art Su-30s or Su-27s, they have their fighter jets raining hell from the skies. Now, what are Putin's forces doing? They're systematically taking out, with their precision-guided munition, strategic airfields, air bases, fuel dumps, ammunition depots and air defense assets. Not just missile power, but also air power. Let me now get you more details. India Today's Shiv Arur gets us more details on how Russia is deploying its air power and how Ukraine is denying the use of skies, or at least attempting to, even on day 14.
Heart-stopping images of a Russian airstrike caught on camera. The first footage of an actual aerial bombing in 11 days of a conflict that's been represented largely by ground attacks. But only an hour after the bombing of Irpin went out on India Today, this stunning 32-second clip capturing a Russian attack helicopter being shot down by a Ukrainian shoulder-fired missile exploded from the battlefield north of Kyiv. In the last 48 hours, the air power aspect has taken on a fearsome new primacy. With aircraft much more visible and claims of Russian pilots taken captive. Both Ukraine and Russia have been old Soviet aviation powerhouses, and the war has generated enormous interest in the warbirds both countries have deployed over their blazing battlefields. The most visible Russian aircraft in the Ukraine crisis is the Sukhoi Su-25, a tough old Soviet-era bird that's taken on most attack duties.
Let me show you what these aircraft are that are doing the bombing and that the Ukrainians claim that they've actually shot down. These are strikes very close to Kyiv. The jet dropping the bombs is called a Sukhoi 25. It's a Sukhoi Su-25. It's a ground strike aircraft. It is designed for close air support to ground forces, and there are huge ground forces of the Russian army that's, outside on the outskirts of Kyiv right now. These aircraft are designed and capable of low-altitude bombings. That's why you saw them captured so clearly on mobile camera. Their weapons include strike missiles, bombs, rockets. They've so far been used in many, many different operations around the world, including and most notably in Afghanistan, Syria, Iraq, and Sudan, but of course in many other operations, including in North Africa as well.
The most visible Russian helicopter in the war is the Mi-24. Seen here being dramatically shot down by a Ukrainian shoulder-fired missile. These are sturdy, heavily armed and armored helicopters deployed to support ground troops and destroy tanks and other ground targets. The Mi-24's export variant, the Mi-35, is in service with the Indian Air Force too. The third Russian aircraft type seen in the skies over Ukraine is the Sukhoi Su-34, a supersonic medium-range fighter bomber used for tactical strikes in contested airspace. Su-34s have been seen in the air over eastern and north Ukraine. The other Russian attack helicopter on combat duties in Ukraine is the Kamov Ka-52. These images of one such helicopter made to force land went viral in the early days of the invasion. Several more are set to be flying sorties in the northern border. Also clearly visible in the skies over Ukraine are Russian Mi-8 utility helicopters captured here in this airborne assault on the Hostomel air base north of Kyiv in the early days of the invasion. These workhorse helicopters are a precursor to the Mi-17 that India currently operates. Ukraine has made the huge claim that its air defense systems have shot down 2 giant Il-76 transport jets, though there has been no visual proof of this. While the iconic Russian Tu-95 hasn't been seen in the skies over Ukraine or even nearby, the high-flying propeller-driven aircraft has figured in the war of claims between both sides, with Ukraine saying its air defense forces have managed to shoot down one of these giant airplanes. As air power becomes more pronounced in Ukraine, and as NATO continues to refuse Ukraine's plea for the imposition of a no-fly zone, could airstrikes define the second week of Putin's invasion? With Rajesh Pawar in Irpin and Gaurav Sawant and Geeta Mohan in Kyiv, Bureau Report, India Today.
This war between Russia and Ukraine is also a litmus test for the massive Russian arsenal, its weapons and systems, and their might globally. Do keep in mind, India extensively uses Russian equipment, be it the Su-30 MKIs, of course that's an Indian version of the Su-30 fighter jets, the MiG-29s, the attack helicopters, the transport helicopters, Mi-35, Mi-24, the Mi-17s, the Mi-8s. India extensively uses Russian aircraft, helicopters, the S-400, state-of-the-art S-400 system that India has just acquired despite American threat of Katsa or sanctions. This was a deal worth 39,000 crore, but that's not all. India employs and uses Russian equipment, from the T-90 tanks to T-72 tanks to armored personal carriers to infantry combat vehicles and a lot more. But this war truly is a test for those Russian systems, including air defense systems. Take a look at this report.
As the Russia-Ukraine crisis escalates and as the shockwaves are felt all around the world, one of those shockwaves is definitely here in India as well. It's a good time to remember that the Indian military happens to be one of the largest users of Soviet-era and Russian weaponry and military hardware. And that's one of the reasons why, amidst everything that's happening with all the unpredictability between Russia and Ukraine, the Indian Ministry of Defense has held a high-level meeting to assess the possible aftermath, the possible risk to India's arsenals as a result of this war between Russia and Ukraine. Russian equipment dominates every aspect of India's war-fighting arsenal across the three services. Let's start with the Indian Air Force. The newest equipment is the S-400 Triumph air defense missile system. Then you've got a huge fleet of Su-30 MKI fighters. Then there are the MiG-29, the upgraded MiG-29 fighters, which are a mainstay in the Indian Air Force. Then you've got the old MiG-21 fighter jets. They've got a controversial reputation, but continue to operate in large numbers. One of the biggest aircraft operated by the Indian Air Force is also of Russian origin, the Ilyushin IL-76 fleet and the similar IL-78, which is India's mid-air refueling tanker fleet. Then you've got the IL-76 Falcon airborne warning and control system aircraft, which are based in Agra. Utility helicopters are also Russian. The Mi-17 helicopters, very visible, very iconic. They're the mainstay, the backbone of India's medium-lift helicopter fleet. Then you've got Mi-35 heavy assault helicopters, also of Russian origin, operated by India. The Mi-26 heavy lift helicopters, the biggest helicopters in the world, also in Indian service, are from Russia. The BrahMos cruise missile is an Indo-Russian joint venture. Much of the technology is from Russia.
Day 14 of this conflict, and India Today's team, camera person Pawan Kumar, India Today's Foreign Affairs editor Geeta Mohan and I will continue to report from Ground Zero. But that is all we have time for on this India Today special broadcast from Ukraine. Many thanks for watching.